Welcome to the Tomorrow Zone Catalyst podcast. I'm your host, Deborah Rubin. This conversation is part of our Future Shaping Leaders series, inspired by my new book, Enter the Tomorrow Zone: How to Inspire Breakthrough Innovation and Shape Your Future. In this series, we're exploring how senior leaders are thinking and leading while responsible for shaping the future inside of complex organizations and markets. So let's get into it. Today's conversation features Deb Baker. Deb is Vice President and Head of Global Payment Solutions at HP, where she leads the company's multi-finance partner strategy across global markets, helping customers and partners drive growth through innovative payment and asset management solutions. With over 30 years experience in vendor financing and leadership roles at HP, Cisco Systems Capital, and CIT, she is bringing deep experience in financial strategy, innovation, and leading through change. She also serves as chair of the Equipment Leasing and Finance Association's board of directors, making her a respected voice in the future of finance and business leadership. And I'm so excited to welcome you to the show, Deb.
Thanks, Deb. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me.
I was really looking forward to this conversation because I was thinking back to one of our first collaborations, and that was in the very beginning of ELFA's Women's Council. I think that's the first time I got to actually collaborate with you. We threw sticky notes all over the wall and stuff. But then you also showed up really strong for me, and I'm so grateful as part of our pre-launch team as I was launching my book earlier this year and the new Audible that's coming out. And then I recently saw you speak at Monitor's Lead Her event. And I have to say, the panel that you were on, that was my favorite moment over the whole 2-day event. It's sticking with me still. So it's been really, really fun to see you in action and to hear you on stage. And so excited to dive into your story. I wonder if you could just share sort of a 30,000 foot view of the type of work that you're leading and the strategic focus behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. First, let me echo, I had so much fun on the panel. It was just so great to hear just very candid conversations and perspectives of fellow leaders in the industry. And, we laughed a lot, and it was really, really fun. It was certainly a highlight of some of the things that I've done recently. And it was an absolute pleasure to be part of your pre-launch. I felt like I got a sneak peek in the book and got to read it in advance and share my thoughts. I've already listened to it on Audible. I'm addicted to Audible. I love to have, a book going when I'm walking or doing things around the house. So it's such a great opportunity to constantly reinforce the topics and, go back and the fact that you then also have the PDF of all of the graphics included. I thought it was brilliant. Brilliant. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for that. And I really appreciated your feedback and your enthusiasm. It meant a lot to me. So you have a lot going on in you have a significant role with HP, but then also, like, if that's not enough, you're also leading ELFA this year. So can you share that kind of big picture view of the work that you're leading and the strategic focus for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we start with the association, having the opportunity to chair the Equipment Leasing and Finance Association gives me, I think, a broader voice than what I have even in my role at HP. And the focus is really around ensuring that the industry remains relevant and that we are attracting talent, attracting the next generation of leaders into our industry, into the association. And, what I do at HP, I'm in a unique position because I have a very small team, right? I have a small but mighty team of 12 inside a 55,000 person organization, right? So we are the leasing and financing experts within the organization. And as you mentioned, I support HP's multi-finance partner strategy. So 10 plus years ago, when HP was one entity, we had a captive. But when the company separated into HP Inc. and Hewlett Packard Enterprise, the captive actually went under Hewlett Packard Enterprise. So HPE Financial Services continues to be an extraordinarily strategic partner for HP. But we made the decision about 8 years ago that we wanted to ensure that we, for business continuity reasons, for competitive reasons, for country expansion reasons, we wanted to make sure that we had the right capabilities with the right partners to satisfy all of our customer requirements. And we actually hired the Alta Group at the time. And the Alta Group did a bit of a gap analysis for us. And the first thing they said was, HP, there's a risk associated with having a single finance partner that's owned by another manufacturing company, that theoretically could have a change in their capital allocation strategy. And they said, you can maintain that risk. You can establish your own captive, or you can do something in the middle. And we chose to do kind of that something in the middle, which was to launch a multi-finance partner strategy. The other thing they said was, hey, HP, you have no leasing and financing expertise. It all left with HP Financial Services. So I was literally employee number one in, at the time, what was the worldwide leasing and financing organization. And we've grown significantly to 12 people.
Wow.
We actually rebranded a couple of years ago when I was asked to take on consumer financing, which was something I knew nothing about. It was a fantastic growth opportunity. So we literally now own everything from convenient payment types, buy now, pay later, all the way up to traditional financing products. So that's a little bit of the backstory. But, as you know, when the economy gets tough, payment solutions become more and more relevant, right? So we're in a situation right now where prices have significantly increased, not just with inflation, but significantly related to component shortages, right? So we have costs that are going up significantly, and we need to react to that. And my team specifically is responsible for both strategy and enablement. So what is the strategy around financing, and how does that strategy enable sales for HP? And when technology is evolving, customers increasingly want us to talk to them about outcomes, right? How is financing a strategic enabler, right? Customers don't want to simply talk about speeds and feeds. They want to have a conversation around what outcome are they trying to achieve, and then what is the solution that HP can help them achieve that outcome. And usually the outcome is not about faster processing. The outcome is about increasing revenue, decreasing cost, increasing productivity, ensuring security, right? So those are the types of conversations that we're making sure are happening today. And it's really focused around or anchored around this notion of one HP, right? We are uniquely qualified in the industry. No one else has PC and print and collaboration and security and software, all wrapped up, that we can kind of be a single hand to shake for our customer base.
Wow. So you really are tasked with bringing clarity in the midst of a lot of complexity, is what it sounds like. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, employee number one, and you have 12 people supporting this big, complex initiative. So what sparked your commitment to this challenge that you're working on, and why?
Historically, financing was the last question, right? A solution would be put together, and then the salesperson says, and how do you want to pay for that? Can you cut me a PO? And then when the customer's reaction is, what? I can't afford that. We need to flip the conversation. We need to talk about the solution up front, inclusive of leasing, financing, especially when affordability is so important. And I have a dear friend on within the True Finance organization. And I watched him present one day, and he talked about the Oreo cookie. And he talks to every seller within the organization, and he says, you have to have the full Oreo cookie, which is, the top, the bottom, and the middle. So you need to have hardware, software, and services. And whether that hardware is PC or printer collaboration, and the software is, security, and the services are break fix, et cetera, but you need to sell the whole package and peripherals, et cetera. And I said, I think you're missing something. I said, when you take that Oreo cookie and you enrobe it in dark chocolate, then you have something special. And that dark chocolate is the payment solution that enables that whole Oreo cookie.
I love that. And with that chocolate outer coating, it now becomes protected, and then we can call it a health food.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I love that visual. I was like drawing the Oreo cookie in my notes as you were talking.
Nice. It makes me hungry every time I tell the story. That's the only problem.
Yeah. I love where you went with that. Like, chocolate is always a good thing.
Every time I see this person, I say to him, I'm like, are you still telling the Oreo cookie story? And he says, yes, every time. And I said, and are you enrobing it in chocolate? And he's like, I always forget that part. And I'm like, oh, no.
You just send him a bouquet of chocolate enrobed Oreos on a stick.
Yes. Perfect.
Here's your reminder. Well, I think that's actually a really interesting strategy. And it kind of reminds me of some of the ways that we work with folks in getting clarity before technology decisions. But it all comes back to, like, let's take a holistic view of what we're trying to do and why, so that we're not missing important components of the big picture. And so I think we're pretty aligned in our thinking there. So when you first began this journey, where did you focus your energy, and why did you choose to start there?
Well, first of all, I know in the book you specifically state, communicating that big picture, it's not one and done. And reiterating that, and as importantly, gaining stakeholder alignment, and which is also not a one-time occurrence, right? We need to bring people along on the journey. And it is a journey, right? Because you're talking about discrete technologies. You're talking about technology sellers that are evolving into solution sellers and really understand, or they're beginning to understand, the value of the total solution, the value of 1HP. The other thing that we've done differently is in this environment of cost, we have customers that are simply saying, I can't afford to refresh my entire fleet right now. And HP has launched a software product called the Workforce Experience Platform. And through the use of telemetry, we can allow our customers to actually refresh opportunistically. So HP was customer zero with the Workforce Experience Platform, which is now part of Gartner's Magic Quadrant. So we're super excited because it got there super fast. But with HP using it, we actually reduced our own refresh costs by 40%. And over that time horizon, we increased customer satisfaction or employee satisfaction by 70%. Because the idea is, with remote monitoring, we can solve problems before they occur. We can send a patch when it is required. We can diagnose the full health of the portfolio. And then HP can decide, our customers can decide what needs to be replaced today and what can stay as part of the fleet. So it's been a fantastic opportunity for us to test internally and get that buy-in internally, which then gave the confidence to our sellers to understand what the use case is and to ask the right questions of our customers when we're talking about that solution. And it almost seems counterintuitive, because we are a technology manufacturing company that is enabling their customers to delay a refresh, right? And oh, by the way, it's manufacturer agnostic. So our customers can see the health of their HP equipment and all of the competitor equipment as well.
So you're putting a really important tool in the hands of your customers, though, because you're giving them predictive capability and ongoing monitoring of the health of their devices, tools, whatever they're using. But the other thing that I'm seeing in this is you're trading, hey, let's just sell more stuff, whether they need it or not, with data-driven control in the hands of the customer so they can make better decisions and more wisely spend their money, and you're building trust along the way. That is brilliant. I love it.
Yes. And that's the word that we heard most often is, HP, I want you to be my trusted partner. I want you to guide me. I want you to give me the tools so that I can have a successful business and I can make informed decisions. This gives customers the ability to make those informed decisions.
Yeah, that is so vital. And I just see this becoming more and more important all over the place. There's so much noise. And when you can get a clear picture of true data that you can trust, it just up levels your decision making power. So, as you were on this journey and building this whole new capability and new way of helping and interacting with both your partners and your customers, let's talk about how beliefs may have shifted along the way. What is
I think
maybe an assumption or something about leadership that you had to kind of rethink along the way?
Yeah, I think part of it was rethinking what financing enables. And I think in the past, it was financing creating value through capital, right? That's not what we're focused on. It's financing creating value through flexibility, giving customers the flexibility. And I do think, and maybe WXP becomes the double stuff in the Oreo, right? Because as much as we say, okay, there's software there, but now you've got a layer of WXP that is so significantly impactful in the solution. So security is table stakes now, right? And we have the most secure technology in the industry. But now we've layered, something incremental that can differentiate the product for the customers, again, specifically based upon what is the outcome a customer is trying to achieve. So I think if we shift away from here, we're giving you access to capital. Two, we're giving you greater flexibility because that is something that customers are telling us. They want flexibility. They want different ways to consume product than perhaps they have in the past, right? They are looking for some level of creativity and sometimes some level of risk sharing as well.
That is so important too when you think about just the forces of change that are impacting your customers in reality, and as much as they impact you as a company. I mean, you have to be able to pivot, flex, and shift as things are changing around you. I think that that's a really interesting shift in thinking too, that financing isn't just enabling access to capital, but the flexibility in how you make decisions and how you grow and how creative you can get. But the other word that was coming to mind as I was thinking about this, as a business owner, to have that and the data behind it and the ability to make better decisions, I also feel like that probably is boosting confidence in decision making, having the stability, like I can trust this, I know that this is going to work.
Yeah, having data to rely on does give that level of confidence in having discussions with customers, with CIOs, right? As well as, a CEO, a CFO that is in the mix. So if you think about all of the stakeholders, having the ability to have a data-driven conversation becomes really, really, really important. And I've been so impressed with how many reference accounts we've had in such a short period of time, right? Customers saying, I will share my cost savings, my increases in employee satisfaction, et cetera. So I think that is also a testament to the value that we're bringing.
I'm curious, can you say more about how this relates to employee satisfaction? Because that's something a lot of companies are struggling with these days.
So we saw a 70% increase in employee satisfaction specific to PC refresh cycle. So if I'm an employee and my PC shuts down regularly, right? It's a drain on productivity. It's a significant dissatisfier. Well, by overlaying the workforce experience platform, all of that noise goes away, right? The updates are sent proactively. Fixes are made proactively. We have the telemetry to know when is a refresh required, and it's not based upon the age of the product. It's based upon the health of the product. So then when there is an awareness based upon telemetry that it's time for a refresh, well, then the refresh shows up on the person's doorstep or at their desk in the office. So the fact that all of that loss of productivity that results from glitches, snags, aged equipment, et cetera, that all went away. That was the biggest indicator. So going through surveys with our customers, and it did give them the confidence that they knew, every day their PC was going to provide a productivity enhancement to them, and not a reason to have to open a ticket, for example. And both, by the way, IT tickets were significantly slashed. And I know as a user, the last thing I want to do is have to get on the phone with, get in the queue, know that I'm 7 in the queue, wait, and then have someone take over. All of that went away. And that's why there was such an increase in employee satisfaction associated with tech refresh.
Oh, that is a really great story. So, along the way, as you were building this new thing at HB, when it comes to leadership, were there any habits that you personally had to adjust in order to make meaningful progress on this?
I think part of it was this was new, right? And everyone was coming to, there was the idea, we've had this one HP future ready organization, bundling all of the offers that we have and focusing on the customer. When you see it on paper, it makes perfect sense. And then when you start peeling back the layers of the onion, how do we make that happen? And how do we ensure the sellers have the tools that they need, that the marketing organization understands the messaging? So the upfront stakeholder alignment was essential. My comment that I made before, we're a manufacturing company that are helping our customers delay refreshing their product. I can imagine when that idea was first floated to our head of category. But when you think about the relationship, when you think about lifetime value of a customer because of the trust that we're building, then it makes sense. But it's asking all of the questions and ensuring that all of the stakeholders' voices are heard, but then understand and fully buy in so that we're all speaking with the same voice. And again, that includes legal, that includes supply chain, right? That includes all of the different elements of the organization so that we're all rowing in the same direction.
That is so key, especially when you're shifting something that is so maybe counterintuitive, especially if you're in a sales role, to continually remind yourself to be thinking about long-term value versus the short-term gain. That's tremendous. So, you've grown significantly, you said, to your team of 12. But I mean, a lot is happening under the surface, driving a lot of change across the organization. Mindsets are shifting. How you're doing things with your partners and your customers is shifting. So, as you were gaining momentum and moving forward, what changed along the way about how you made decisions or the way that you involve stakeholders? You've talked about stakeholders a lot and really understanding their perspectives, but like, how did you bring them along with you?
Yeah, I think we absolutely had to bring folks together from whether it is the product team, our channel partners, the finance organization, all of the cross-functional teams very, very early in the in the process, right? Up front so that we could listen, we could answer questions. Obviously, our ability to collaborate through technology was hugely beneficial as well, just in terms of having folks' literal voices be heard. And so that we could give them equal time, if you will, to understand any potential objections that we weren't potentially contemplating. But everybody recognized from day one that the solution doesn't come from the salesperson necessarily, right? The solution, right, comes from all of the different constituents coming together for a single objective. And that single objective is solving customers' problems. So if you think about customer first, customer first, customer first, what are our customers asking for? And our customers are asking for us to show up as one HP, not as a PC provider, a print provider, a software provider, a services provider. Oh, by the way, wrapped up in a payment solution that makes it convenient, affordable, and effective for customers.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that, I'm sure gets rid of a lot of confusion and fragmented experiences for your customers. But how has that changed things for you just internally as a team? Like, what have you seen in this evolution?
Financing continues to become relevant in the toughest of times, right? And being brought in on the conversation at the onset as opposed to at the end is a mantra that we have been articulating for many, many years, right? We know that statistically, when a payment solution is included, average transaction cost is higher, discount rates are lower, margin is higher, right? It makes sense, but often it's an afterthought. And inserting upfront constantly, and now literally having a seat at the table to say, we have solutions that can solve people's problems. I can't eliminate increases in cost, but I can ease them. I can say to a customer, you can acquire 12 months worth of product today and not incur the cost until you deploy it in your environment, right? There are financial triggers that we can use. I hate to use the word creative because accountants don't look like the word creative, right? But if we get a little more rocky road and a little less vanilla when it comes to a payment solution, we can leverage deferrals, skip payments, step payments that become very tangible in terms of a sales enablement tool. And again, it's not just about capital. Yes, the capital is behind it, but it's also the overall solution that allows customers to acquire product as and when they require it.
And that brings us right back to that building, partner level of trust and enabling the flexibility that your customers need for them to stay relevant. And you've mentioned relevance several times throughout our conversation here. And so I just want to kind of take a glimpse into the future a little bit. As you look ahead, Deb, what feels most critical to get right next in order to maintain that long-term relevance that you've been talking about?
Innovation is at a pace that I think no one anticipated even 6 months ago, right? AI is touching everything. And that can be exciting, that can be a little bit scary, but we need to be able to keep pace with what our customers expect in terms of AI transformation. So if providing a payment solution enables a customer's AI transformation, then, that's something that we can participate in. The other thing that we're seeing because of rising costs is we're seeing a very real shift from the cloud to the edge. So for the first time ever, we've got workstations that have enough power to complete the most complex tasks, and they can do so at a fraction of the cost. Right. So I go back to, what is the customer trying to achieve? The customer is not trying to achieve having, cloud compute power. They want to be able to complete a very complex activity. If they can do it with a device in front of them that is secure and that is, efficient, effective, and oh, by the way, just from a cost perspective, then it becomes a real opportunity for customers to think differently compared to what they've always done. And I know that we've had this conversation. Anytime I ask the question, why do we do things this way? I don't ever want to hear the question. Well, that's because we've always done it that way. It's like, wrong answer. Now let's think a little bit differently, because some of these things are fundamental shifts in the way we have seen things historically and the way we are doing things today and the way we will do things, 6 months from now or 6 years from now.
Yeah, it just opens up a whole new frontier. And it's interesting you've talked about enabling sales, enabling flexibility, but this is on a whole other level, enabling your customers to think completely different about how they do business now and into the future. So you're enabling them to shape their future in a lot of different ways. So I'm curious, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but from your vantage point as chair of ELFA's board of directors, when you think on an industry level and take that same look ahead, what is critical for our industry to get right in order to maintain long-term relevance?
As chair, I talk a lot about talent. I talk a lot about next generation talent. We don't continue to excel and grow without the ability to attract talent to our industry. So I know we all like to say nobody grows up saying they want to go into equipment finance. My mom was in equipment finance, and even I did not grow up saying I wanted to go into equipment finance, right? But things are shifting, right? With the substantial expansion of the CLFP and their affiliation with ELFA, with the university partnerships. I mean, I am so excited because I live for the day. I say to someone, they say, "What do you do, Deb?" And I say, "I'm in equipment finance." And the next question I get is, what is equipment finance? Right? And I love the question. We all love the question. Like, look around you. Everything that you see is financeable. I just had this conversation at the Biltmore Estates as I was checking in, and the gentleman was asking me what I do for a living. But, I would love the day when people say, "Oh, you're in equipment finance?" That's what my daughter wants to do. That's what my son wants to do. He sees the curriculum. He sees the opportunity. There are scholarships available. There's exposure. I think that's what we need to focus on, because the leaders of tomorrow are the ones who are going to continue to ensure the future of the association.
Yeah, I love that vision. I've thought about this often. What would this industry look like if people got into this industry on purpose instead of stumbling into it?
Yes, on purpose.
Man, it's going to look totally different. And it's so exciting to see the groundwork that's being laid right now for that vision to actually come to life. So I'm so glad that you're behind, like, helping to make all this happen, and very excited about this new CLFP affiliation, and looking forward to seeing, what kind of growth can come from that, especially in attracting next generation talent. So I can't believe how fast this conversation has gone, but we're to the lightning round. I have a few questions prepared for you. So I'm just looking for quick answers. So the first one is a fill in the blank. Long-term relevance requires blank.
Being nimble.
Ooh, that's good. Nimble.
I had a salesperson I supported many years ago, and he used to talk about, he's like, Deb, we need infinite elasticity. And he would literally, infinite elasticity. I don't know if we can give infinite elasticity, but being nimble and keeping abreast of what's in the environment today and what what are we seeing around corners? I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually one of our practices. We look at that every month across multiple dimensions. What are we seeing? What could that mean for us and our clients? So I love that nimble. But here's another one. So what one word best describes what this work has demanded of you personally as a leader?
I'm going to use two words: dot connector. And what I mean by dot connector is I go back to 12 people in an organization of 55,000. My team likes to say we educate one person at a time. So we're probably up to, I don't know, 20,000 people, and we've got another 35,000 to go. But as we connect dots, there is that aha moment that people are like, I get it. I get why that Oreo cookie should be dipped in chocolate. Why didn't I think of that before?
And when that network effect kicks in.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
So
exactly.
what is a signal? I mean, you mentioned, staying abreast of trends and forces of change. What is a signal or shift that you believe leaders might be underestimating right now?
Most companies are very focused on AI, right? And how AI is changing products or is changing processes, but it's also changing how customers want to consume technology, want to measure value, right? It's not just about ensuring, hey, I've got these 5 AI initiatives. It's what value comes out of those AI initiatives. It's not enough to simply say, oh, yes, we're focused on AI. What is the value that is bringing to your bottom line? That should be the focused area, not the AI itself, but what it produces and how it either increases revenue, decreases cost, increases margin.
Absolutely. Last question for you. So looking back on all of this, what do you wish someone would have told you before you started?
I wish somebody would have told me to go into equipment finance because it's such a fantastic industry. No.
Did you not talk to your mom?
I know, right? It's like, Mom, I think that, I've always said, surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, because it's not about having the right answers. It's about having a willingness to ask the right questions, rethink the way questions are being asked, and really lean in on what could be possible if we think about things in a slightly different way.
I love that so much. Possibility thinking and leaning into curiosity. And this is actually, I don't know if you know this about my story, but back in 2020, I was reimagining my business. And one of the things I actually wrote down on my brainstorming pages, I want to be surrounded by smart people that challenge me. And here you are on my show.
I love that. I love that.
So anyway, Deb, this has been really fun chatting with you and getting to know more about your story and how you think as a leader. I'm so excited for all that you've accomplished, but also what you have ahead of you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for the time.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And if you're serious about shaping the future inside your organization, I encourage you to start with my book, Enter the Tomorrow Zone. You can find it at Amazon. If it sparks ideas, reveals gaps worth exploring, reach out to us at tomorrowzone.io. We would love a conversation. Thanks again for listening. We encourage you to like, subscribe, share this with a friend if you found value here. And as always, stay curious and choose to make awesome happen.